story this hour, authorities continue to search the rugged terrain in search of the daring hijacker who commandeered Northwest Orient Flight 704 and made a desperate leap from the aircraft. Authorities
First time we've all been together in like 3 years.
It's a party. Hello, Gabriela. Thank you for joining us.
Hey,
Hi. I was telling, I'll just say it. I just love this movie. Really marvelous job all around. Just private round of applause before we start the interview, just because, yeah, you could tell you all put your heart into it. It really shows. So yeah.
I will just say at the outset that is one thing I was really pleased with is like all three of you specifically did a really, really wonderful job. Especially, of course I've seen the film like 50 million times now as I've done the editing, but like all the performances were really solid, and I mean it's not something you normally see at the budget level that we had to work with, but we really did get a cast of people, and that was Taylor. Honestly, that's all Taylor. Like she won't admit it, but she handled the casting, and like
it was a group effort.
Yeah, it was. But I mean, I can't take credit for it. Other than I'll let's do her. But it really that is the one thing we had. We had a really, really good cast, and they did do a great job. So
fabulous.
Great story as well. It's working with friends. It's first off, that's a phenomenal thing that already creates an amazing environment. So you really feel like you're at your best because you're with the people you're most comfortable with, and you can create really well with. And no wonder people like to coalesce in Hollywood when they work together. But also the story, that's huge kudos to Michael for his storytelling skills. The story was very compelling, and we loved it from the start. I mean, it was like, what's not to like about this? Like, we're working with our friends, and it's an amazing story. So it was a win-win on all sides.
Fabulous. I want to leave this part in somehow. Maybe I'll put it in right after the trailer. But if we just start with everyone, if you could just introduce yourselves and what you did on the film.
So I'm Michael Barder. Wrote, directed, and produced the project.
I'm Taylor Lyons. I was a producer and actress in Flight 704.
And hi, I'm Gabriela Kostadinova, and I play Hilda in Flight 704.
Hi, I'm Colonel Mckenith, and I play Evelyn in Flight 704.
Fabulous. I just, as I was saying before we all officially started taping, this film is great, I believe, for many reasons. The writing, the directing, the acting. Evelyn, I feel your character too is a big standout. Would you like to tell us how you prepared for your role, how you got involved with the project? Take it away.
Absolutely. So first, I was hyping up my girl Taylor because she actually, we trained together years ago, and she reached out to me in regards to the part. And when I read it, I just felt like an instant connection, and I was like, oh, and then when I just read the full story, I was even more invested. So by the time I auditioned for it, and they gave me the offer, I was just really ready to dive in. Like I spent days either reading the script or just working on certain scenes from the script. And I really wanted to like just go there because Evelyn is someone who I've seen in my friends and family members, right? And so being able to dive that deep, I don't have children myself, right? But I've seen plenty of women, Black women too, you know, just have to handle that by themselves. And so for me, it was very personal. It was personal, you know, and I think the essence, the aura of Evelyn, and I was telling Michael this, but like the writing, right? Like it's always amazing when you get to read a script and you're like, you feel her in you already. And that's because of the writing, you know? And me and Michael come from two different walks of life, right? But like, I think that just shows like how that collaboration allows us to create magic together. And so I was just really, really inspired just from the writing alone. And it allowed me to go deeper and deeper and have the freedom to create, to spend time with myself and kind of see, you know, what ways I was able to just give more of myself to Evelyn. And that was really cool. So I spent I think we had about maybe 2 or 3 months before we actually shot it. So I kind of just managed my time to play around with her. And then by the time we were in the hotel, I was like focused in going up until the shooting day. So that's kind of how I prepared for it.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, as I was telling Michael once, because he was kind of like, oh, well, it's called the Her Vision Film Festival. But, you know, that's a caveat that we have. It really, one of the pillars is to show females, you know, female actors as well in a strong role. Like we're, you know, not, you know, just quibbling in the corner waiting for a man or anybody else to rescue us. And I believe Evelyn truly embodies that spirit.
Yeah.
That's
Just had that, like,
Comes down with a shotgun. It's like, ain't no man coming for me.
hey. Yeah, she's definitely down to get to business. And I honestly, like the power that Evelyn has, I honestly think that every woman has that. Now, sometimes I think we're a little more timid to tap into that, that masculinity. But the truth is, like, all of us, we have that power inside of us. And it's just a matter of if you tapped into it or not. I'm getting more into my Evelyn phase for Carol myself. So, you know.
That's a new T-shirt you all should come out with. Get into Evelyn mode.
Tap in.
They're fabulous. Would we like to speak about the producing? How did that come along? So I would think that you knew Michael beforehand, and yeah, if you would like to take the floor next.
Yeah. So we'd been introduced before for helping out with another project behind the scenes, and he reached out saying if we wanted to be a part of the project. So reading the first script, I got really into it. I got real jazzed about the characters and the storyline. And even it went through a couple of edits and rewrites and stuff. And every time I was still like, I'm there. So, and then I just got, I was kind of a costume nerd about some things. So I started helping out with sourcing some of the costumes and things. And then it just, like, we just seemed to like click on a bunch of different levels. So just started working on everything. And I didn't even know it was producing until they're like, oh, so yeah, you're the producer. And I was like, what? And I was like, I thought I was just helping out. So that was my first time producing. So I was like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot. Like I have a much deeper appreciation for all aspects of filmmaking because I've only ever done acting before. So I was like, well, yeah.
And you all you ladies did a brilliant job acting, really. There's a lot there. There's we were speaking earlier before, it's such a rewatchable film. Like you get like, oh, I missed that little portion the last time. You know, so it's not like a one and done viewing type film. I think that's really important and something that's really lacking today. So yeah, just
That's really
Bravo.
good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So now you have this kind of taste for producing. Are you going to do it again?
I don't know. I was like, it was a lot. I was like, maybe in a smaller form. But yeah, learning to delegate is key. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And anyone take this, anyone can jump in on this question. What do you feel you learned the most from this project?
Oh,
It's a really good question. I'm so sorry. This is it, notifications. I think my biggest takeaway was that, you know, the art imitates life. And I think what I loved about it is the fact that we all got to experience different circumstances because we shot it in a few different locations. So naturally, you can never, I think that's what life is about. Like you make certain plans, but things always change. And that happens in every production, that should be, as a matter of fact, I think it's essential that there are curveballs because that allows for magic to come in. So what I really enjoy is all the plans are great, learning your lines and being informed. That's great. That's just you being ready at the start line, but you don't know what's going to happen during the race, which is the most exciting part about the whole thing, is because that's what I love the most. Honestly, it was the unexpected moments, the heat of the plane. We shot in this incredible, it's not a replica, it's an actual Boeing 727 in Riverside. And just because of the nature of the circumstances is that it was very hot. It's very hot in California. So it's just, you can't fight with the heat. You can't tell the sun to turn itself down. So what I love is being put in those circumstances where it's not all about comfort. My mentor actually came on to be a part of the film as well. And I remember I was ushering him I was like, let me take you to the bathroom down the road to the actual headquarters of the airport. He said, no. He's like, let me go to the porta potty. I want to immerse myself. He said, let me suffer. As in, what I'm trying to say is that we see amazing movies that we praise all the time, and then you hear this behind the scenes stories, and we always get so fascinated when the actors say, oh, well, I broke my toe on this one, or this is what happened on that one. That's what makes the story to me. That's not like a hurdle and an obstacle, like, oh, how dare they. It's more so, oh wow, like that's a life experience. That's something that life just brings in that no one could have predicted, no one could have controlled. It's all about learning how to pivot and learning how to actually take that into the story, because what are we doing telling life stories if we're not actually living life? So what I really love, to round it up, my biggest takeaway is, as much as I love the story itself and what the structure of the story is, I loved how life came in to bring so much more meat to that story. And actually the story, I think Michael's story became so much more alive because of all the different scenarios and all the different ways that we all had to coalesce together, deal with certain obstacles, deal with a certain challenge, which only provided an amazing opportunity to make our characters more alive. So yeah, it's like, pun intended, it's like a fight or flight thing, just like it was for the characters. There are situations in filming, because it is a marathon, like it's really not glamorous, and it shouldn't be. That's not the glam. The glam is on the red carpet, and when we all pretend it's all great. It is all great, is what I'm trying to say. Is you go through this boot camp, every experience is like a boot camp. Anyone will tell you that. And I think that's how it's, in a way, that's how it's to be expected almost, because if you don't have those unexpected moments, then I ask myself now, did we really make some magic? Because if everything was planned and executed perfectly, did we actually kind of limit the magic? So anyway, that's kind of like my takeaway from that.
Great point. Keeping the spontaneity on set to make
raised all the filmmakers. That's not to say there were problems. It's more so we dealt with every challenge as it came together. And I just wanted to make that point clear, is that it's all about how you deal with it and what you make out of it, like making lemonade, because you can't protect, you can't make it so sterile to where problems are not going to come. You have to be ready for those to come. Like you have to leave room. And as a good producer, as a good director, like everyone knows that like you have to leave room for those. And you're actually expecting them to say, okay, now we're going to pivot here. So I think it's actually the best skill that a filmmaker should have is to know how to pivot.
Yeah. I think one that leads into my biggest thing the whole time. I was like, everything always works out better than expected. One, like, because it was super hot and everything, but it also made us all look stressed in the stress scenes. And then, like we had a couple of scenarios getting the locations together where one place fell through, and then that turned out being a miracle, like a huge blessing, because we were able to film in the real plane and use the air stairs and all these different other things. But time after again, it was like, if we all just do our best under our current circumstances, everything will work out better than expected. So yeah, there was like one day, Gabby was there. We'd lost some costume pieces in the transport because we were taking things from the East Coast to the West Coast, and some of them were missing. And I was just like, everything works out better than expected. And then 30 minutes later, those items showed up. So I was like, we just got to keep positive and not like, yeah, that was just reaffirming that mindset.
That's funny.
Beautiful. Kind of like in life. It seems like you all got lessons from this project to carry out
the challenge
into the real world.
I actually was telling Taylor and Michael and like everybody that I actually so enjoyed the part of like the whole process was awesome because like we got to shoot in Virginia, we shot at Fremont Street in Vegas, which was such a cool experience. Like it was like an honor to be there. And we also shot at that plane. And that experience on the plane, because it was so grueling in terms of the temperatures, in terms of the pace of the filming, it did create great performances because you didn't have too much time to get in your head. And then you also had the opportunity, like Taylor said, to be able to really use your current circumstances, which is technically acting 101 when you think about it. You know, it's like, it's not overthinking it too much, but to this day, I think it remains as one of the best, like the most gratifying filming experiences that I've had because of knowing what we had to like, what hurdles we had to get over. And that makes you just feel so much better about what you've done because you overcame it. So again, I think I don't know, maybe I'm just an extreme person, but I like it.
No, it sounds great. Did anyone else want to come in on that question, what they learned the most, or should I move on? I just wanted to give everyone a chance to.
I would say grit, because watching them, I mean, so for me, I only worked a few days out of the time that they were, filming it. But like through conversation and just kind of learning of some of the obstacles that easily would have stopped anyone in their tracks, like I just feel like each and every person on this call, Taylor, Gabby, Michael, we're like relentless in that. And I think it shows up obviously because there is that finished product. It's 2 years later, here we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so to me, I think it is that grit and the collaboration. Like when I was on set and being able to work with Michael and Taylor, like the collaboration, like that really triggered me to come alive. And so that's what I took away from it too.
I agree. And I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about, my strengths and weaknesses. And, they say, the adage that, filmmaking is problem solving, and that very much was the case for us. I mean, we went through a lot to get it done. And so there, it was a very collaborative effort. And I think, just as indie filmmakers, I mean, just figuring out ways to get around obstacles, because there's always obstacles. And for something that I think we really, I think Taylor and I had a lot of these conversations too. Like we went above and beyond what a micro budget film normally would do. And figured out ways to do that without having to, because we didn't have, an extra $100,000 we could find and, whatever. So like, we had to we had finite resources, and we had to figure out a way to make it work within that. And we did. And I think, that also, I think just for me, learning how to to just to navigate that process and to understand that, you know, you have a roadblock in your way. You've got to get from point A to point B. So you've got to figure out a way around it, over it, under it, some way, but you got to get past the roadblock, because the alternative isn't.
Big kudos to also to my husband, Steven Shulgach, who was a DP of the film. That's a big part of like the effort that Michael and Taylor put into the production design, just the story, you know, making everything authentic to the 80s and making the plane outfitted with seats. Like, you guys, if you want to chime in on like the process you went through to outfit the plane with seats.
We all have set building credit now.
Which is awesome. Because
we built the plane.
We felt like we were taking care of our own plane, so we cared more for it as the flight crew, you know. Like, it was actually kind of cool. It was a really nice team building experience. But to know the parameters, like Michael was saying, like to know the parameters and limitations that you have, and then to be able to confine that within the frame. My husband is such a great cinematographer, and I'm not just biased. He truly is so talented at what he does that he takes all the hard work that's been done by the other departments, and he knows how to fit it perfectly in the frame, just exactly where it needs to be, just right. You know, nothing outside, nothing that he suspends the belief right there in that frame. And so the cinematography, I think, is phenomenal. And I just wanted to add the last thing, speaking of the hard circumstances or like the heat and whatnot that contributed to our performances, very humbly, I say, I don't know, you know, sometimes I think, man, if it wasn't that hot, or if, you know, if there weren't all these elements, would I have performed, you know, that way? So there are times when I'm like, am I that good of an actor under sterile circumstances? So I always need something intense. But anyway, point is to the fact that it is a collaborative thing. And I think it does keep you very humble. And you realize, like Carol said, you need to be there with everybody. It's not a sterile effort. It's not in a vacuum. You have to get there in the mud and get your hands dirty, which is, again, it's the most gratifying thing, truly.
Yeah, truly enjoying the process and taking from it to enrich the film. Just to your set building comment, I heard the Beatles built their first stage. So
hey,
there you go.
In good company.
Exactly. I wanted to ask about the story, the actual writing about it. What inspired that? Because it's one of the great mysteries of history to this day, right? So, you know, what shone the spotlight on that for you, on this particular character? How did he, I'll jump in with the puns, how did he get his wings?
I think one thing for me, like I really love aviation. And so I you know, I originally, the idea was, and when I first talked to Alan and Taylor about it, it was like, let's shoot a movie. We're done, you know, it's COVID. I'm tired of being locked up, and do a film. It'll be easy. One location, no big deal. You know, yeah, famous last words. And so I think for me, the story, it was just intriguing. And you know, I could have gone with the kind of more of the not docu, but more of the like the narrative telling of the actual story. But I kind of wanted to approach it from the perspective of, you know, we don't know who this person was. We don't know what happened to him. So let's take, you know, that idea and say, well, what if 10 years later on the anniversary, you know, this happens again, and is it the real guy? Is it somebody else? Well, we don't really know. And so I think that was just my creative take on it. I think, but I wanted it to feel authentic, and I wanted it to feel not contrived, I guess is the right word. And that's kind of where, as we kind of got into, you know, the production side of it, and, you know, realizing, you know, we do need a specific type of aircraft because we don't have the money to build a set. We don't have the money to do certain things that we want to do. So we actually do need some of these elements, and we got to find them. And I think the other part of the story too, for me, was just about, you know, like Evelyn's story and Celia's story and Hilda's story, like those arcs, I think those weren't originally in the idea that I had for the story. They, you know, honestly, the original idea that I was trying to create this really cool kind of thriller that was all confined inside the airplane and really was more about the hijacker. And as I started writing, I was telling Carol this, as I started writing, a whole different story came out. so I find that when I write, like sometimes that'll happen where I might have an idea for something, but as it like starts coming out on the page, so to speak, as something very different flows, and it's a very interesting process. But I felt like, you know, as I, you know, I connected to Evelyn's character. My mom was a single mom, and so I kind of, that's, you know, the impetus for that kind of, those elements of the story kind of came through, and I think that's really, I wanted to see her, you know, triumph in the end, and I wanted to see, you know, Celia, you know, the same kind of thing, and so I think, you know, that was kind of how, that was my mindset, I guess, in writing it. It was really like, how can we tell these kind of three character arcs in a way that feels real and feels authentic, but at the same, it's not stereotypical, you know, like you were saying, you know, the woman who needs the guy to come save her or whatever. It's like, that wasn't my overt intent with writing it. Like I wasn't thinking, let's make a story about these three really strong women and how they overcome this adverse circumstance. That really wasn't the idea. You know, originally, not there's anything wrong with that, but that wasn't but that's what came out. And but I feel like that ended up being the right approach for what we were doing, and I think it worked out really well.
Definitely. It almost, I even dare say, has like an ensemble piece feel. You know, like it isn't like just the hijacker story or just DB Cooper's story. You know, it does. It's kind of like what, you know, the Titanic did, you know, the Leonardo DiCaprio version for that piece of history. So yeah,
Right.
like it, yeah.
Exactly. And the idea, I mean, the idea was based on obviously the real person from 1971, but you know, there were several copycats that did happen in the years after that. And so that was kind of the idea, was that, and Taylor and I, when we were talking about it, you know, because I didn't want to, you know, the original flight attendants are still alive who dealt with them. And I was like, we're not gonna have the money to go get story rights and stuff like that. So we're, you know, so is there another angle we can take? You know, and so that was kind of where the whole, like, well, let's piggyback off the whole copycat thing and say, well, you know.
And I might be geeking out here, but Michael or Taylor, do you guys want to speak to how the plane was used later on by another production? Speaking of the story.
I don't know if that actually happened or not. So on shortly before production, we had so the airplane that we shot on was a 727 that had been retired by FedEx. So it was a freighter. So it had nothing inside, just you know, wide open cabin. And so we had to, you know, reconfigure it obviously back to passenger. So there was if you think of a junkyard for cars, but for planes, not too far away, literally every plane part you could think of, they had it. So they had seats and wall panels and bins and the whole deal. So that's where we got all that stuff from, and we installed it ourselves and made it look good. But it's a whole long convoluted story, but basically a buddy of mine was looking for an airplane to do something with, and so he bought this airplane. And then he ended up, after we were done, he ended up cutting it up and moving it. So before all that, the person we got the seats and stuff from had a guy who like sources aircraft for Hollywood movies. Like he did the airplanes for Sully and stuff like that. So he called up my contact, like, where he was looking for the tail section of a 727, which of course we had.
Really, that's what we got.
I don't know what it was for. It may or may not have been for something that Marvel was doing. I don't know, and I don't know if the deal ever got done. But it was kind of funny where you never know. Like all these weird, just kind of connections that came out of it was kind of pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I have to say, I also really enjoyed Eric Roberts' performance in the film as well. How did he come on board?
That's the long story. So we ended up. So the scenes that all of that originally was shot at the same time. We did everything in the airplane. All the cockpits of everything was done. But the actor that we'd had for the the captain was not a professional actor and a friend of somebody. And going back and looking at it, it just, I mean, you had these phenomenal performances in the main cabin and then the cockpit, which was kind of important to the story.
Sure.
This wasn't quite there. So we debated, did we want to reshoot, just live with it, whatever. And again, Taylor and I went back and forth on this a bunch. And we finally was like, oh, let's redo it. And then we're like, well, if we redo it, do we want to try and get somebody to play the captain? We know it'd just be a day on set. Can we do it reasonably? And she knew someone who had worked with him, and so her friend put us in touch, and we were able to get him for a day at a significantly reduced day rate from even what his manager was trying to get us to do.
They were very kind.
And
I fit the manager.
Yeah, and it worked.
She was like, I like the story. So I was like, yay.
That's got to be a great boost right off the bat too. I think that's so inspiring. Like, I hope people watching this go like, oh, okay, if I up the quality of my story, people, kind of like build it, they will come mentality. But it's true, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Because he watched. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, we sent him the trailer to be like, hey, would you be interested in this? And that's what he said. He hit up Alan or Cooper, and he messaged him. I don't know how he found his email, but he's like, I really loved your performance. It was really solid. I'm excited to work with you. But he didn't actually see him on set. They were filming but I was like, that's so cool. So
yeah, so we are all acting with Eric Roberts, just never acted in person.
I know. I don't know if he would have been able to handle the heat, though, man.
It would have been hotter than that plane, I bet you. I'm sure you guys.
So for those performances, we ended up having, because by that time the airplane we used was no longer there; it had been moved and disassembled. So we found a super cheap cockpit in Anaheim that we were able to use, and we just had to match it. Which I think it looks.
Yeah, it's like the differences in. I know way too much about planes now, especially planes from the 80s. But it's like the differences in the cockpit that were there. They were so slight, and it's like I think there was like a lot of masking and stuff it seemed pretty easy. I have minimal masking experience, but it should look pretty like legit.
You can't. It worked out well, but it was, again, like it was just some not random, but like, you see Eric Roberts, like, wow, okay, it wasn't, it just kind of just happened. I mean, we didn't go into it obviously anticipating we were going to have a known name in the project.
Also another wonderful cast member, James Paxton, too.
Yeah, and even Demeter, your mentor. He's from the Green Book and Night Court. He's very well there now, and a bunch of stuff. So like we have, and actually the guy who played Mr. Sterling is actually one of the lead writers on Night Court. So like we have all these people who since Flight 704.
Not to mention humble brag on Carol knocking it out with all these Disney things. What, you didn't tell anybody?
It just came out on Instagram one day.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I guess that's non-disclosure agreements, but okay.
I love y'all. Well, I was telling Michael that, I don't think I really ever shared this in detail with you guys, but I made a post and I was just saying that you guys, Flight 704 was the catalyst for me and me being able to do the things I'm doing now. So when I came back from filming, I was like I was alive. Like I felt so alive when we finished filming. And when I came back home, I was like, and I was doing interior design, and I was like, what am I doing? You know what I'm saying? I was just like, this is not not that I didn't love that, but I was like, no, I need to spend more of I want to do this every day, you know? And you know how it is as an actor, like we're auditioning, we're in between jobs, but like when I got to work with you guys and I got to collaborate the way I did and dive into the work, it literally changed my life. So when I say it was a catalyst, like I mean that, because we finished that in January. I wrapped in January, and then the end of February, I put my notice in for my job because I was like, no, I've got to up everything. I got to up my focus so I can do more of this on everything.
So you lived your character's story arc in your life.
I told her into my app. No, but seriously, like, you know, and ever since then, everything has been just moving forward, like significantly. Wow. And so it's you working with you guys, and like the movie itself, like it really does hold so much weight into my artistry, into my career. Like it really changed things for me. It really did. So thank you, Taylor, Gabby, Michael, because I never shared that. I'm sorry I never shared that, but yes. That's what I meant.
Can you share which movie, or was or is it under NDA?
Oh, no. So since Flight 704, she's talking about this, since Flight 704, I mean, I have been able to do A Lead in a Lifetime, MGM's Till, Chicago Med. There's been so many different things I've been able to do because Flight 704 shifted my mindset on me diving back into my art. So
brilliant.
And I will just say that she had a role in Outer Banks that my kids watched, and it gave me some street cred because they were actually very impressed with me because Carol was in my movie and they saw her on the screen in Outer Banks, so that's pretty cool.
Make sure you tell them that, like,
not just a background, role, 22 miles away, down the beach. All you can see if you zoom in really, like, she had a named character.
Yeah.
And like every time I turn around now, I see Carol like on all these big names. Dang,
I know.
Like y'all, like you guys inspired me. Like you just don't understand. Just like.
Would you like to say about what you're doing next? Did you have any other points or stories that you wanted to bring out about the movie?
Well, I know in Vegas, Michael was, there's a scene between Celia and Hilda, and Michael had said that he wrote this scene because it was something that he wanted his daughters to hear, because they're having a conversation about self-worth. And that always really stood out to me, because I don't know why. The plane, it was hot, but for some reason, filming in Vegas was difficult for me mentally. I don't know why. I was like, why am I so fatigued? I was like, okay. I'm here. I love Vegas. I'm here, and I'm doing what I love in a city that I love. And I was like, why? But yeah, I just remember that really stood out to me, being something talking about, Hilda's self-worth, and that she shouldn't, let people treat her poorly just because she's, she feels inferior, or because you meet people who they'll act like they have control over you. It's a form of manipulation and whatnot, and that's where a lot of toxic relationships come from, because they make you feel like you need them, and it's like, no, I don't need you. Yeah, so that was something that really stood out. I thought was really cool, and stuff like that happens throughout the film, talking about self-worth and not letting others trample on you. I think that was for Hilda's story arc right there, really focuses on that, I think, to me, at least.
That was an awesome scene. Yeah, Michael, I didn't know that. That's actually phenomenal. And well, it's kudos to the storyteller, also kudos to all the actors. I think every female in the film, including including DB Cooper himself, and as well as all that ensemble cast of the passengers and Carol's character as well. Like everyone goes to their arc, and I think that's the beauty of stories like that, is that they encompass human stories. Just the circumstances are different. And I think, Michael, you really hit the nail on the head with empowering women that are in different situations. Carol's character is a single mom. Celia's character is in that. It's funny because it was not funny. It's also ironic because she's in a certain position too, where she has to be a leader, but there's, like, what does a leader have to deal with? That's the hard part, is what's behind the scenes. So she has to stay strong. And we see, without any spoilers, we see so much of what's going on in her mind. Like, to me, she is such a carrier of the story, alongside with Cooper himself. And then with Hilda, yes, absolutely. I think those are stories that women will be able to see themselves in. And I remember, just from an acting perspective, I was trying to connect that to something that will be as powerful as possible. And we all have our own personal experiences, so I was pulling on some of those. But I remember, for one of the specifically for one of the scenes, and just the overall character, I had talked to my sister, who had gone through domestic abuse and issues with her ex-husband. So this is like real story, etc. And I just remember being very compelled to have even a deeper understanding and compassion. That's why I love storytelling, is because not only do we get to tell our own stories through our characters, but you get to actually be humbled and learn more about life, and have compassion and connect to real life issues that can empower somebody. And that's why we're in this business to begin with. Hopefully, that's the real reason behind everything. So it was amazing to involve those motivations behind the story arc. So let's say for Hilda, for example, the whole goal for Hilda, even though they are on this plane and they're trying to survive, her inner world was, she's just trying to take control again over her life. Which is in the metaphor of surviving whatever is happening, and surviving this man who very much reminds her of somebody that she was trampled on by before. My point is, I love the fact that we can connect to every single human story if the story is told well, and performed well. Hopefully people see themselves in, no matter what the characters are. They don't have to be a single mom or a flight attendant that's dealing with a terrorist kind of character. It's just I think the triumph of the human spirit that everyone's looking for in different forms.
Wow. Yeah, no, again, it speaks to that rewatchability, because I think, you have so many layers in this story. Like, it's not just about, the hijacking or any one character. You have several micros in the macros. So yeah, exactly. All of you, brilliant job.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there definitely are little nuggets in there that you might miss if you don't, if you're not paying attention. That was kind of, I think, what we were trying to do, honestly. So we're trying to create something that you wouldn't really see how it all ends until the end, kind of thing. And I think there are these little things in there that if you blink, you'll miss certain things, or it'd be fun to go back and watch, then realize, oh, okay, now I know why this happened, because this happened, or you connect those things. And I think that's kind of what we were trying to do. So,
and they were fun. I don't know, for me, they were fun Easter eggs. Like, we recreated these flight attendant pins that they would have like in the 80s and stuff. So we're wearing those. We had special name tags made, because we couldn't find anybody that made the correct name tag. So we had to get them like custom for the flight attendants, for the pilots. Yeah, it was just we tried to be as authentic as we could for as little as possible. But yeah, like we had in-flight magazines, because that was a thing that was on every flight. And one of the cool things was we did some crowdfunding, and the people who donated X amount, they're featured in that magazine. So we're like, ooh, flip. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those props too, like the old cell phones and
the Walkman. Okay, so there's this kid on the plane. He's got a Walkman, and we found like the first Walkman ever. But earlier, the movie takes place in November 1981. That year, only 2 months prior, they released the Walkman 2, and that's the one that we got. So it adds a little extra character development to one of the kids being like, he's actually pretty fancy. but that's all. I was like, yeah, I was like, I was so, I don't know. We talked about this. I was like, I think I got a little too anal sometimes about where the props were from. I was like, no, they did not have that at that time. It's like, but yeah,
but that matters.
Yeah,
that matters.
Yeah, I
that's
just
that's what characterizes a high level production is those details. Like that's how you know it's not just the big elements. It's like it's the little mortar in between. I think that's what really like puts the bow on top.
I was like, oh,
Yeah, like even the phone. Like, technically, those phones hadn't been released yet, but if you pay attention to the dialogue between those two characters talking about the phone as he's testing them, and they were testing them at that time in Chicago. But what was it, Motorola or whoever? It's like so little things like that. Like if you might think, oh, they didn't have brick phones yet. Well, they didn't. But if you pay attention to what's being said, we tell you.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
isn't ready yet. But we tested it, and then that was the case. So anyway.
Wow. I think this has been so inspiring, like, for filmmakers that do have that, like, oh, let's call it a bit of a contained script. Like you all have showcased that if you just have, because I think what's so underestimated in filming is courage. Like people don't realize like the courage you need to like just show like something you've written to somebody, for like fear of criticism or jealousy or anything like that. So you've all like, to me, have displayed this courage of just being able, to work together and get something, great out of a micro budget. Because sometimes people cringe. They're like, oh, do you want to see a low budget movie or a micro budget? And they're like, no, but like you guys have really, stepped up what that means. So just, yeah, kudos again. If you'd, like to speak to that end.
Kudos to Michael and Taylor. They feel like they were really the backbone of so much of that. Like, I'm so curious, how does it feel for you guys, like knowing where we started and where we're at now? What does it feel like for you guys?
I don't know how I feel. I'm just glad to be here.
She hasn't seen the cut yet, so she doesn't want to say anything. Just kidding.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel. I was like, I think I feel great.
Like Michael, for you, like starting with like a blank page to where we're at now, like that's
I think to kind of into what you were just saying, I think it's important to not put yourself in a box and to predetermine what's possible given the resources you have, because you don't know. And like, honestly, to be able to have done what we did and how we did it, it's pretty remarkable that we were able to do all that. Like literally, you wouldn't think of a budget level that we were at, shooting in multiple locations in multiple places in the country. Like, yeah, it was like 3 locations, but they were 3,000 miles apart. So like that, but we were able to figure out a way to do it. And I think for anyone who wants to embark on a film like this, like, it's just don't assume because you don't have $100,000 or $1 million that you can't do certain things, because you can do whatever you want to do. You just got to figure out a way to do it. And so don't limit yourself based on, and I think, honestly, for me, it really, like, my fear from the very beginning was that, before I knew anybody who we were going to have in it, my fear was that we were just going to have local actors who, basically just sound like they're reciting their lines, and it just wasn't going to be, kind of that feeling. And I think, like, just going back to the scene you guys are talking about in Vegas, I mean, that's just even on set at the time watching, and I was doing sound for that, by the way. Sounds amazing. But talk about, taking on multiple things, right? I literally was, had a boom over them talking, so I heard it all. But anyway, like, it was hard for me to watch them perform that, because it was so real and so just gut-wrenchingly authentic, just in how they did that. Like, there was multiple times in performances where it's like, somebody would do something and like it was exactly how I envisioned it, but I hadn't had a chance to even communicate that. Like they just had the same kind of feeling that I did, which was really good. So I guess so my thing is like looking at the performances and, you know, take Eric Roberts out of it. Like we had just a phenomenal cast of people who really just did a crazy job. And you know, it's not, I mean, I don't know. It's so many things had to line up for that to happen, but it really, it's just so, I'm grateful that it did happen and that we did have something that we can be proud of. And I understand the whole courage thing. Even now, like, I'm scared to death. Like, honestly, if Tim hadn't showed you this film, you never would have seen it. So, it's like, so like, there's that part of me that I'm so afraid that it's just going to get, you know, people are just going to dismiss it, you know, because of, you know, whatever reason. But and I know obviously it's not a rational fear, but that is very much a part of me, and it's something I have to work on. It. I'm afraid of showing people things that, you know, because it's, yeah, you're just so afraid of that, you know, rejection. And it's like the little kid in me.
Oh, congrats to you. I'll just say this, if you just want to end by kind of saying what you're doing next, and then I think we should be good.
Cool. Yeah. So for me, I have another feature that I've written that we're hoping to be in production this fall. So, but I'm just, you know, plugging along.
Who'd like to go next?
We're all like so coy. Carol.
For me, just pray for me. You know, we all just want to continue to do the work. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. Just doing the, you know, auditions, and then been a lot of commercials recently. But you know, hopefully in the fall, this another feature sorts out. But you know, when you're doing a film that they have everything but funding, you're like, when is it gonna happen? So yeah, things like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same here. Constantly putting in the work, you know, chiseling away at the block. And next step for me, immediately next step is I just have to pass my black belt test. So that's it right now. And then whatever else comes up through the grapevine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think we're good. I just want to thank you all for taking the time today. It's just been such a joy for me because, like I said, such a standout film in every way possible. You all just brilliant job all around. Like I said, I can watch it again and again. It's just really, it has that factor, that rewatchable factor.
Awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you
So much for
That's
this.
all.
See you again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Katerina, because this has been great to have us all together and talk, and it's been a fun experience. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
my pleasure. I felt like I was invited to a cast party today. It's a treat for me. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. And yes, and congratulations on all your efforts.
Thank you. You as well.